I just don't get how people can ignore human rights abuses. If a country is criminalizing LGBTQ people, shouldn't the international community do something? Sanctions, pressure, intervention, otherwise we're just complicit.
That sounds reasonable on the surface, but the problem is that doing something usually means sanctions or regime change, and those don't protect queer people. They kill them. Sanctions devastate entire populations, especially the most marginalized. Queer people don't
But
escape
what's the
that.
alternative? Just letting governments oppress people?
Before answering that, I think it's important to clarify something. Muslim societies are often discussed as if queer people don't exist in them. That's simply false. LGBTQ people exist in Muslim societies, have always existed, and they navigate their lives within cultural, religious, and social norms, sometimes quietly, sometimes communally, sometimes with great difficulty. And Western narratives erase that reality by framing these societies as uniquely backward, which conveniently justifies
But
intervention.
George, aren't Islamic teachings fundamentally opposed to homosexuality?
Islamic societies are not monolithic. Yes, many Muslims believe same-sex relationships are religiously impermissible, but Islam also places enormous emphasis on justice, adl, human dignity, karama, and privacy sitta. Classical Islamic law is very clear that the state is not meant to pry into private lives. Surveillance, public shamming, and coercion are themselves injustices.
But criminal laws still exist.
They do, and many Muslims oppose them. But here's the issue. When Western powers weaponize LGBTQ rights to attack Muslim societies, it doesn't help queer Muslims. It actually makes things worse. Queer identities get framed as foreign, colonial, or imposed. That increases backlash.
That's the heart of pinkwashing. Western states present themselves as enlightened saviors of queer people while bombing, sanctioning, or destabilizing entire regions. It's propaganda. If they actually cared about queer rights, they wouldn't be allied with Saudi Arabia.
Okay, but surely Western societies are more progressive overall.
That's Western chauvinism. The West has better branding, not better ethics. It took centuries of struggle, often violently suppressed, to gain even limited rights. And the West still incarcerates, impoverishes, and polices queer and trans people, especially if they're poor or racialized.
And from a Muslim perspective, justice isn't measured by how loudly you proclaim virtue. It's measured by whether people can live with dignity, safety, and basic material security. Housing, food, healthcare, these are moral obligations in Islam.
So you're saying queer rights should wait?
No, I'm saying queer people don't benefit from chaos, poverty, or foreign domination. Islam teaches that oppression, zulm, must be removed at its root. Colonialism and imperialism are forms of oppression. A society fighting for survival under sanctions or occupation cannot do the internal moral work required for social change.
Right, you can't bomb or sanction a country into liberation. Every time the US claims it's doing regime change for human rights, the result is a power vacuum, more repression, and more deaths, including queer
But
people.
doesn't staying silent enable bad laws?
Public moral outrage from Westerners often isn't neutral. It feeds media narratives that governments use to justify intervention. That's why it matters who is speaking and from where.
Within Muslim ethics, reform must come from within communities. There is a principle, no compulsion in religion. Social change imposed through humiliation or force is illegitimate.
So what should someone like me do?
Critique your own government. Stop arms sales. Oppose sanctions. Defund wars. Support refugees. Donate to grassroots groups led by people in those countries.
I guess I never thought about how my criticism could be used politically.
That's the whole point. Pinkwashing turns good intentions into tools of empire.
Justice without humility becomes tyranny. Islam warns us about that. Liberation that destroys lives is not liberation at all.
So real solidarity means restraint.
And material action, where you actually have power.
But liberal democracy works though. It wasn't imposed on the West. Western societies chose secular governance because it protects freedom. Isn't it reasonable to want that for everyone?
You're proving my point without realizing it. Western societies chose secular liberal democracy through centuries of internal struggle, revolutions, civil wars, labor movements, religious conflicts. No foreign empire showed up and said, "Here, govern yourselves this way or we'll starve you."
Exactly, Europe fought religious wars for hundreds of years before deciding how religion and state should relate. That process was painful, organic, and internal.
And that choice was respected. No one sanctioned France into secularism. No one bombed England until it separated church and crown. No one invaded the US until it expanded suffrage. The West had the freedom to fail, to experiment, to evolve.
But Muslim societies,
Are never granted that same freedom. That's the colonial lens. Muslim societies are treated like children who must be corrected, punished, or supervised if they don't govern themselves the right way.
From a Muslim perspective, that's deeply insulting. Islam teaches that communities are morally accountable for their own choices before God. Governance is not something that can be outsourced or imposed without corruption.
If secular liberal democracy is so strong, then it should stand on its own merits. It shouldn't need sanctions, coups, drone strikes, or IMF debt traps to spread.
but what if a society chooses something illiberal?
That's where courage comes in. The courage to accept that self-determination means outcomes you may not like. You don't actually believe in freedom if you only support it when people agree with you.
In Islam, coercion invalidates moral action. A society forced into a system under threat is not morally choosing anything, it's surviving.
Western societies claim secular liberal democracy as a moral triumph precisely because it was chosen. Then they deny that same God-given right to others. That's hypocrisy. Muslim societies have an inherent right, call it God-given, natural, or moral, to govern themselves without foreign domination. No empire has the authority to decide what kind of political system another civilization must adopt.
The Quran is clear. God created nations and tribes so that they may know one another, not dominate one another. Governance must reflect a people's history, values, and social realities.
Removing the colonial lens means accepting that Muslim societies are not failed versions of the West. They are civilizations with their own intellectual traditions, legal frameworks, and moral philosophies. No, it rejects imperial enforcement of morality. Those are not the same thing. You can oppose injustice without appointing yourself global ruler.
Internal critique exists in Muslim societies. Scholars, activists, women, workers, and yes, queer Muslims debate these issues every day, but their work is undermined when the West frames reform as submission to foreign pressure.
If the West truly believed in freedom, it would step back completely. No sanctions, no regime change, no human rights ultimatums, zero interference.
That feels uncomfortable.
Of course it does. Colonialism trained the West to believe it must manage the world. Letting go feels like losing control, but it's actually respecting sovereignty.
True justice requires humility, the bravery to say, "This is not mine to decide."
Western societies chose their path freely. Muslim societies must be allowed the same dignity to choose their own governance, their own pace of change, their own moral priorities.
That doesn't mean perfection, it means responsibility.
And responsibility is meaningless without freedom. Until Muslim societies are free from imperial interference, no one in the West has the moral authority to lecture them.
So real solidarity is stepping aside.
Yes, and defending their right to choose, even when that choice challenges your assumptions.
That is justice, not domination dressed up as concern.
I hear what you're saying about sovereignty and imperialism. I really do. I just don't want to abandon LGBTQ people who are suffering.
Then don't, but be honest about where you actually have power.
What do you mean?
If you genuinely care about LGBTQ rights, there are queer people right here, in your country, whose lives you could materially improve tomorrow. You don't need sanctions or foreign policy to do that.
Compassion is measured by action, not outrage.
Look around, Fable. In the UK, there are LGBTQ refugees, many from Muslim-majority countries, sleeping in shelters, stuck in detention centres, or bouncing between temporary housing.
Yeah, I know the asylum system is bad.
So here's the question. If you have a spare room, why not open it? If you don't, why not help fund safe housing programs that do?
That feels a lot more real than posting about sanctions.
Exactly. And it actually helps queer people instead of hurting them.
Many queer refugees are Muslim themselves. They don't want their homelands bombed. They want safety, dignity, and a chance to live.
Or take healthcare. You want to save queer lives, help pay for HIV medications, or mental health support for LGBTQ communities in the Middle East through grassroots, non-governmental networks, not Western state agencies.
I didn't even realize that was possible.
It is, and it doesn't require destabilizing an entire region. You can donate to clinics, mutual aid groups, underground healthcare networks, groups actually run by people in those communities.
That kind of support respects privacy and autonomy. It doesn't mark queer people as Western proxies.
So you're saying,
I'm saying if your concern for queer people only shows up when it's time to condemn another country, then it's not solidarity. It's moral theatre.
Real solidarity is quiet, patient, and rooted in care.
Advocate for asylum protections. Fight deportations. Challenge your government when it denies visas to queer refugees while selling weapons to their oppressors.
that feels like something I could actually do.
Good, because that's where your voice matters. Not lecturing entire civilizations about how to live.
Islam teaches that saving one life is as if you saved all of humanity. You don't need to fix the world to do that. You just need to help the person in front of you.
And here's the hard truth. You can't liberate people you're not willing to house, feed, or care for.
That hits.
It should. If you want to stand for LGBTQ rights, stand with people, not over them.
Let Muslim societies work through their own struggles. Support queer Muslims without turning them into symbols of Western superiority.
So the real question isn't, how do we fix them? It's, what am I actually willing to do?
Justice begins at home and radiates outward through humility, not force.